Melanie, is it good to begin?
It is.
Great. Hello, welcome. My name is Jane Passioni, and I am the Managing Director of Collective Impact at the San Antonio Area Foundation. I am joined by my colleagues today. Oops, I'm so sorry. I am joined by my colleagues, Deborah Sharvin with the City of San Antonio Disability Access Office and Melanie Crawthorne with Disability SA. So I'm so sorry, my screen is doing something different. It shouldn't be. So let me try this one over here. It is my honor to thank you all for joining us today for the second in a series of 5 conversations around cultivating community resilience, housing, and the disability lived experience. We are here to learn from the diverse perspectives of the disability community as panelists share their experiences and strategies for identifying and removing barriers to finding affordable and accessible housing in San Antonio. Captioning is available by clicking the CC icon in your Zoom toolbar. We welcome questions and comments to be placed in the chat, and if we don't get a response for you today, we will be following up with the answers and additional information. We have a short session today, and out of respect for your time, it is my pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Melanie Crawford, who will lead our panelists through a reflective discussion. Melanie serves as the Executive Director of Disability SA. She has worked in the nonprofit sector for over 20 years and within the disability sector for more than 17 of those years. The vision of Disability SA is to make San Antonio the #1 community where people with disabilities want to live, learn, work, and play. Today, Melanie actively serves on 14, I'm going to repeat that, 14 different committees and initiatives around housing, transportation, socialization, healthcare, education, and employment, working diligently to amplify the concerns and elevate the considerations of individuals with disabilities within the planning discussions and at the decision tables which determine San Antonio's future. Without further delay, I'll pass it over to Melanie.
Thank you so much, Jane. I am going to do a little bit of pinning and repinning here really fast. So removing that. Add. Oh. Okay, so, and that, let's see. Okay, and one more little thing. Okay. All right. Can the second interpreter identify themselves?
Hi, my name is David Cisneros.
And thank you, Davis. And is there another interpreter?
No, it's just me.
Okay, great. All right, here we go. All right, it is my pleasure to introduce our panelists. You will only see 2 of our panelists on the screen today. The third one has called in. And with that, I will introduce James. He joins us by phone. James got into the self-advocacy movement back in 1989 and has been advocating for individuals with disabilities for the past 37 years. He was the first self-advocate to be on the ARC board of Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1990. And in 1994, James got involved with the national self-advocacy movement and served as the treasurer, vice president, and finally as the president in the period of 1999 to 2000. Throughout the decades, he's received numerous awards for his work in self-advocacy and sexual assault education movements. So James, we're so pleased to have you here. The second panelist is Andre Greeny. And he is a proud District 5 resident and San Antonio transplant. His move to San Antonio was the result of a car accident, which caused a traumatic brain injury. And he was encouraged to move to San Antonio, leaving his family and supports behind so that he could receive the best treatment possible. Andre is a great advocate for connectivity and close proximity and is currently serving on the 2022-2027 Streets and Sidewalks Bond Committee for D5. And finally, we have Pamela Kelly. She's the former executive director for Reaching Maximum Independence and served over 35 years in leadership, providing residential programs for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities here in San Antonio. She was innovative in securing housing within neighborhoods and apartment settings and has helped numerous individuals secure a greater sense of independence throughout her tenure in that role. And without further ado, in respect for everybody's time, we'll go ahead and jump into questions. The first one I have is for all of you, and then Pam, for as you were trying to secure housing, what are the challenges or barriers to finding and securing your living arrangements? And Andre, we'll start with you.
Awesome. It's so easy to be able to tell you how hard it was to get a place to live because I was a transplant, as she says. So I lived with two of my students from St. Mary's University for the entire time I was in rehab. And at the same time, I needed somewhere to live after I was finished. So I literally would just walk throughout the neighborhoods trying to find places to go. And every time I'd go somewhere, they didn't have enough, or there was a waiting list that was months and months ahead. And then when it's all said and done, I'm gonna afford this. I've been disabled for the last 4 or 5 months and I have no income. So what do? On top of that, they evicted me out of my apartment because I was in the hospital in a coma. So there were other things that were outside of that I had to deal with. So the hardest thing was trying to find somewhere to be. That was really tough. And making sure that I get to where I need to be. That was going to be convenient for my appointments, when I learn how to ride the bus. I don't know how to drive, and I'm okay with that. So I was concerned about making sure I was where I needed to be. So I would, because I live with my two students, anything within 3-mile radius I'd walk to because I didn't know how to drive at the time. And I was a former triathlete, so I took advantage of that by just walking everywhere. And finally, I was able to put stuff together and be able to move to the next level. But it was tough.
Thank you. So James, how about you next? What are some of the challenges or barriers to finding, securing living arrangements? I know you've lived in a variety of places, so maybe there and here in San Antonio.
Thanks, Melly. It's reasonable affording housing options and the apartments of living on a disability income, and why access to employment is limited for those living with intellectual disabilities, along with the complicated paperwork around of housing.
And why is it specifically important about the affordability and the challenges that a person with IDD might have to alternative forms of income other than a fixed income?
Because sometimes it's the cost of housing, especially rent for me first, not for myself, but many others like myself who have experience of the cost of living is going higher and higher and higher. But it's hard, especially those who want to work in the community, but at the same time, they're worried about losing their benefits through SSI or SSDI if they go over a certain number of quarters each time. If they go higher up, they may lose their benefits. And if they lose their benefits, they may lose their place where they live because they have enough money to pay rent. But it's not like an equal portion to help people to know what's out there, because like the program I'm at in my apartment, they have a subsidy program. If you make a certain amount of money, you will lose your apartment, and that benefit, I will have to pay the full price of it.
As well as many of the other supportive benefits that come under those funding streams, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
because
go ahead.
because I love where I'm living, because it's nice. I feel safe, and it's a, how I could say, it's not a privilege, but instead it's felt like I earned this place. It's pretty, it's nice, it's really nice, all inside. For example, if you see my apartment, the building's all inside. Like when you go to a hotel room, you have the room in the building. It's like my apartment is inside the building, not like a typical apartment. You just open the door and you get in your apartment. But for myself, it's that I could go to a secure door after dark to go a place like this to feel a belonging. But at the same time, if you make too much money, you may lose your eligibility and you have to move somewhere else. And it's frustrating because a lot of people want to work in the community, but at the same time, the cost of housing, especially rent, is going up. And like groceries and the basic things we take for granted.
So Pamela, when looking at places for putting group homes or moving people into apartment complex, what were some of the challenges that you experienced as a provider trying to find and secure living arrangements for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
Let me give you a little background about the programs that I worked with first. Community group homes are operated by private providers, both for-profit providers and nonprofit providers. And these providers are state contracted. Day-to-day operations are funded through one of two Medicaid programs, but the cost of setting up the programs falls to the organization and is not reimbursed through any Medicaid programs. While the goal is for the homes to be typical residential dwellings, indistinguishable from their neighbors on the outside, modifications such as fire suppression systems, which can run from 15 to 20% of the entire cost of the home, and the accessible interiors are very costly and require multiple approvals from state inspectors. Then there's just the typical problems that any homeowner would have of finding a 4 to 6 bedroom home in an affordable and appropriate neighborhood. And by appropriate, I mean close to bus routes, walkable, close to stores, all of those things. Then there is the obstacle of the neighbors, as well as some city officials who do not understand that these homes are considered the primary residence of the individuals who will be living there. They are not considered businesses, so they can be in a residential single family zoned area. Even though the individuals are not related, it does not require any type of multifamily zoning. And all of that was put into law under Ann Richards back in 1981. So it's a long-standing rule, but we have people trying to challenge it all the time. And frequently it's people who work peripherally with the city, people in the fire department, EMS, all sorts of different organizations. And they know enough about the zoning to believe that they're within their rights to challenge these group homes. But under the state laws, they are not. The strict state guidelines that are put out for group homes are different and considerably stricter than boarding houses. And back when there was that big fire in the boarding house, everybody got up in arms and wanted to layer on more regulations for group homes. But it's not necessary because we're already highly restricted in the things we can do. And there's an annual recertification process and a vigorous system of handling complaints. So we're pretty well covered there. But then there's also the neighborhood association's perception that these homes are halfway houses, that the residents would be violent, crazy, criminal, all the negative things. They're just absolutely not true. And it's just based on perception because the public at large is not well enough versed in what IDD really is. There's also the issue of staff workers, and some residents believe that's going to drive down the cost, their property values. But to date, most of the homes that we at least had handled look better than all the neighbors and better maintained. So it is a fear, but not an actuality. Then there's additionally the situations where our individuals need live in different environments, not group homes. And those are also Medicaid funded and very well lined out and regulated. And those are foster care and supported home living. All of those issues that James was talking about earning too much money, losing the benefits, all of that comes into play with all of these programs because they are Medicaid funded, and Medicaid is dependent upon SSI or SSDI eligibility. These foster care and supported home living programs run into the things that both of these other gentlemen talked about, where the managers of apartment communities do not fully understand the support services that they get and the income streams. Also the income streams for foster care, where foster care is not taxable income. So their available funds are higher than for the typical individual. So there's a lot of complications there just with the education of the apartment living community. And then there is an additional issue if an individual, and many of the people we served are not their own guardians, for them to be able to lease an apartment in their name. And that gets extremely complicated because, again, people don't understand all of the issues surrounding it. So suffice to say, the list goes on in these programs because you're juggling 5 different residential programs, all funded by Medicaid. Then you're trying to integrate state and local, and they don't understand that sometimes city ordinances are different from the regulations that the state set. And so there's a lot of give and take in those areas. So I'm happy to explain further. Sometimes it's good to know a little more of the history behind these programs. Thank you.
Can't hear you, Melanie.
So sorry, Alexa started going off here, and so I muted myself. Thank you so much for that background and those challenges that individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities are facing in just navigating and finding housing here in San Antonio. The next question I would like to go into is we're going to take a more positive approach and look at the accessibility features that are in our homes and those that we depend on or wouldn't want to be living without. And Andre, again, I'm going to start with you. Could you talk a little bit about what makes your home accessible to you and the things that you depend on or wouldn't want to live without? And Andre, you're also muted.
I said something really funny, you missed it. I just want to say that they can turn my water off, my lights off, as long as I have my Google machine to answer any question I have, and YouTube to double check to make sure that the physician isn't lying to me. So because of artificial intelligence, I'm able to stay ahead of the game when it comes to making sure I know exactly what I need to do and what are some of my symptoms. I know people are concerned about their private stuff going on, all that, privacy, but I'm trusting artificial intelligence enough so that personal things, because I live alone, I don't have a family, no kids, and it's just me when I moved out here. I'm from Florida. So about 80% of my unemployment belongs to making sure that I'm independent, live alone, and if I spit really hard, the river will land in the river. So that's convenient. And the bus is less than 600 yards away, or the other bus 320 yards away. I know that because of Google. So that was really important to me. And it's so good to be alive today because I'm a huge fan of American Horror Story. So I watch on the Google machine, on my smart TV, everything, and all the stuff that I need to learn again that I shared with my granddad watching 227 or watching the Golden Girls with grandma. Those kind of things were great for me. And being alone, having a smart TV to be able to relive that stuff was absolutely amazing. So I'm so thankful for that. And I'm an iOS fanatic before my injury. So being able to utilize things like my Apple Watch or even my computers communicating with you all. Because of the pandemic, I'm able to go to everything, even city council meetings. But the flip side is I have to make sure I don't miss anything. And that's because of my Google Home helps me. Can I do a little side note? My throat, I'm a little self-conscious about it because I was hit by a truck going 60 miles an hour in San Marcos, and I lived. So now I have vocal paralysis. So I tend not to go out much at all because of that. But today I definitely want to be upfront and tell you, share with you, the rest of the world, how I'm able to make living in San Antonio without ever leaving the house. And it's because all of my access.
Thank you so much. I just love your passion about the amenities and the accessibility of what smart home features bring to your ability to live independently. James.
I just want to also add to that, my Apple Watch, if anything ever happens to me, I tell everyone, get an Apple Watch because it'll follow you via GPS to exactly where you are and contact emergency contacts as EMS is on the way. That's better than having a running buddy. So they'll love this. So just want to tell you that.
And Andre, your watch also alerts somebody if it notices that you've fallen.
If I've fallen, absolutely. If I fall, it'll say, a fall detected. Are you okay? It gives me 5 seconds. After that, EMS and my 2 emergency contacts are contacted, which is amazing. So I really love that. So and I don't get lost because of it. Because if I need to catch Uber or via trans, I have my Apple Watch that will notify me where to be, how long it's going to take to get there. So I just take advantage of it, much as I could.
Where would you like to go?
Thank you. Your Apple Watch is asking you where you want to go.
Yeah.
James, talk to me a little bit about the accessibility features in your home that help you live independently as an individual with an intellectual and developmental disability. What are the important features for you?
For me, for example, I know I'm a person who's able to have mobility issues. And for example, I just want a simple place to live, like a wall, a sink, a tub, a stove, and an oven. But also I'm talking about accessibility in the community because one of the things that's very important for me is public transportation. I count on rear transit, paratransit, but also I count on the big bus because I'm not too far from the HEB from my apartment because sometimes I need to get something at the store, and sometimes I could catch the bus and don't have to count via because I have to wait until the next day to go to the store. But if I run out of milk or out of something I want to cook my meal with, I could catch the bus and go to the store. But I think it's also to clarify that it's the basic things what everyone, they want a stove, they want an oven and a place to call their home. But I think the other thing is successful for me is that to know that if I have a problem or something, I could get a hold of a friend to talk about it. Or if I got a notice from my apartment people, sometimes I talk to my friend Judith about it and try to understand what they're trying to say. If I have a problem with something in my apartment, sometimes I have to go downstairs and tell the apartment people what's going on. I don't understand something. They help me to understand what they're trying to say to me when they send me a notice, because sometimes I don't understand the big words. Sometimes I need someone to take the time to explain it to me. Just a simple letter, because they send a notice. And even when I have to recertify, because once a year I have to certify myself, and I try to understand what process I need to be ready, because now I'm used to the certification because I know what they wanted. But early on, it wasn't accessible because I did not know what they want from me.
It's
But
very
it's
complicated.
like a simple place in, like I say, a kitchen, a bathroom, and a bedroom, and it's that simple. And it's important because I love living in the community instead of being segregated, because I like to get to know people around my neighborhood. Get to know my neighbors, because whenever I'm out of town, sometimes I told the neighbors I'm out of town and they could watch over my place if I need to.
Thank you, James. Pamela, talk to us a little bit about the accessibility features that you were looking for that were important for residents in the group homes or the apartment programs.
The same things that Andre and James discussed, being immersed in the community and having transportation that can get them to different events, grocery stores, things of that nature, where they can take full advantage of the things that are available in San Antonio, to go to the Riverwalk, to go to the movies, to just go to the grocery store or the pharmacy. Being segregated is very difficult. And some of y'all will know about the state school located on the south side. It's a very large campus with a lot of people set in an area where it's difficult to access transportation, and there are not as many things to do in the immediate neighborhood. The same with Mission Road, which is predominantly campus-based. And there's a perception that people are safer in a segregated environment. But there's a balance that has to be reached between risk and fulfillment. And you can't live, nobody can live risk-free. So our goal has always been to fully immerse the individual that we work with in the community, so that they can go to square dancing or go to a movie with their friends, to do the things that they want to do and not have such a difficult time in coordinating that.
You. So my next question is going to be specific to each of you. And James, we'll start with you, and then Pam, and then Andre. So James, 30 years ago, did you ever think that you'd be living independently on your own in the community?
That's a good question, Nellie. Next year, knock on, knock on the wall, knock on wood. I never dreamed that back in next year it's be 30 years precise. Next year will be 30 years. And I never thought that I moved from a large group home, from a 12-bed group home to my own place. Of course, it wasn't perfect. Sometimes when you're living on, you have to be perfect. You have to have a straight line and do everything what you're supposed to do, and everything be great. Because sometimes professionals and sometimes families think you have to be perfect. But during that 30 years, everyone had bumps, everyone had barriers. And people have doubts to say, why did this anyway? Why I decided to move out the group home to my own place? I shook my head. But now, 30 years next year, I never dreamed that I am that successful. And I take for granted what I have because I'm able to learn things and to do things. It just hurts my feelings that a lot of people still in a segregated setting, in a group home or a state running institution in Texas, because if we put things in people's heads they cannot do things, they would not do it. If you put those thoughts in people they could make it, I think they could make it. Because I learn a lot. People think I'm from Texas, but no, I'm really truly from Oklahoma. And from Oklahoma, I was live in Louisiana for a while. And it wasn't perfect there either. Bumps all over the road, even Austin, and even when I moved to San Antonio in 2010, I feel like I learned something each day. And we need to help people to believe in themselves and to really help persons, not just people with intellectual disabilities, but all types of disabilities they can make in the community. And I'm very grateful that I have friends around my life who believe me. And just recently, I saw a person who I not see a long time. I thought he would be open about his son, but instead his mind was still shut about seeing his adult son is successful. It is his loss, and I proved myself I make it 30 years, and I'm very grateful of the friends I have in my life who helped me with this. They don't do everything for me, but they give me support and encouragement. It's a two-way street, I think.
Awesome.
When you're live independent, you could do that.
Great. So just changing how we normalize expectations of individuals with different disabilities within our community and setting that expectation that people can live independently instead of expecting that they cannot, and building in our environments to support that, right? So Pam, what are some of the changes that you've seen over the years, and where do we still need to go?
There have been a ton of changes over the years. When I started in this field, way back in college, I had a friend that worked in the state school in Austin, and it was unimaginable how people were treated, and they were treated like cattle. It was the worst thing that I've ever seen. And in the 80s, a move to reduce the occupancy at the state school and shift supported care to the community began. And that was regulated group homes. And they basically function on the same rules that the state school functions on. And then about 15 years ago, people finally, so that was like a 15-year program. Then at about 15 years ago, we began with the home and community support program, which is a more normalized sort of living experience and slightly less restrictive, but still a Medicaid program. So there was a lot of of formalized rules. But it shifted, and people used to live at home with their families in the state school or on the street. There weren't any options. And then the option was 6-person group homes in town. Now there are multiple support programs. Home and community support offers support in the individual's apartment. There's a foster care program where an individual lives with a family, and there are also group homes. So it's a much wider choice. And although it was not funded well in the beginning, it has grown. So there has been considerable progress to having individuals shift into the community to be empowered. There's been a move to change employment so that individuals are no longer in a sheltered workshop where they have sub-minimum wage payments. They are more integrated into the community and are working at gainful employment. So I just have to stress that we are making progress. We're going in the right direction, but it's just really, really slow. And there's still a long way to go. But I think that we're moving forward, and that's a good thing.
Thank you, Pam. And Andre, so to wrap all of this into a bundle, tell me, why is connectivity such a central part of your ability to live independently? And you might be muted.
Connectability, right?
Yeah.
In order to be connected, I have to make sure that all of my smart home projects are exactly catered to what I need. I know that some people worry about their privacy, but I must tell you that for me and my privacy, I'm okay with Google knowing exactly how long it's going to take for me to catch a bus, or even my lessons on via trans, knowing that if I wait 5 seconds, I can take via trans and walk for 6 minutes to a bus stop, which helps quite a bit. Also, the other thing too, being a person with a mental disability and alone a lot, I needed to make sure that I feel okay. If you guys were here, it would smell like coffee and it would smell like eucalyptus. That's what we like to do it. On top of that, what also helps me is, hey Google, can you turn the living room orange?
All right, changing Love Glow Lounge to orange.
Thank you. Can you turn off the Joshua tree?
All right, turning Joshua Tree off.
Oh, okay, Google. Tell me how I get to the doctor's office.
Here is some information from the web that might possibly help. Here's a summary from the website digital-photography-school.com. Let's get started.
Okay, Google.
Don't take.
How do I get to the Hemisphere Park?
The best way to get to Hemisphere by public transportation is to catch 51 departing at 11:52 a.m. from Nogalitos in Es Flores, a 6-minute walk from your current location. It'll take about 21 minutes to get there. You can see the full route on your phone.
Thank you so much, Google.
I'm here to help.
So, and then I was a cyclist as well. And what I did was I signed up for a bunch of Ironman races, and they were virtual races. So last year during the pandemic, I did 28 Ironman races, a race every week where I would walk 50 miles, ride my bicycle in here for 26 miles, and then do another 10K. And the other thing that's been amazing is my smart helmet. You can see right here. Let me turn it on here for you. It turns on for you, and you can even, it shows you GPS where you are and how to get there. And also it takes phone calls, but we don't advise that, but turning lanes is huge, and it's really light. So I can go to the grocery store, no problem. Jump to HEB, no problem. or ride the Riverwalk to my doctor's office, no problem. So that's why connectability has been used for me. Also, because I have no emergency contacts here, I literally send text messages to all my friends that are here, know exactly what's going on, where I'm located, how I'm gonna get there. And when I get there, this is what I look like, stuff like that. So that really helps me out too. And now I have free time because I may get sad or get in my feelings. I'll take a picture of everywhere I've been throughout the day. At the end of the week, send that video to my 3 emergency contacts as a thank you for me having an amazing week. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing it, Andre. So we are getting to the end of our discussion today, and with 1 minute each left for you, would you please tell me one insight or solution that you would like to share with our attendees concerning accessible housing here in San Antonio? And Pam, I'll start with you.
Well, I actually have 2, but I'll divide it.
Oh, and think Pam, I may have to have you repeat that here in just a minute. While she's coming back in, James, you want to talk about an insider solution that you'd like to share with our attendees?
Sure. My hope is talk to us some basic language for us to understand, to talk about accessible housing, especially affordable housing, because a lot of times we use big words, but we want to make it simple and easy. And also to train and educate apartments and apartment management, or even the house people in the housing area about concerns. If a person have a concern or issues about their apartment or even the building, to take the time to listen, because just recently we changed owners of the apartment building, and now I have to retrain them about how I share my concerns, because usually the old management told me about it, say, go ahead, tell me about it. And sometimes the new people say, James, you just need to email to us. I said, well, I'm more about talk to you guys better than email it, because that's easy to explain, because sometimes I don't have Dragon, and it's Dragon dictates to do that. But take the time to listen to the person if they have concerns about the building where they live, or even the house they're renting, and talk about why it's important to listen to us if we have a concern.
Thank you, James. Andre, how about you?
Absolutely. I just want to piggyback on what James said. I'm a former hall director in college. So I basically, before my crash, spent 30 years in student housing. So I always look at things from that perspective. And like he said, the loft type of living where we're all on the inside, we have no access really to go outside except the front doors, which is amazing and awesome, and quite a bit of help. I think from my living on campus mentality, I think it would be essential, like they explained about having people that'll come by to make sure you understand your leases. Also to make sure you understand what's going on in the area. Even some community events where you have programming where people that live like this are able to take advantage of and build community with as well. I think that would be used for people with disabilities. But more than anything, what I can't live without, on top of all that, is my shower bars. I absolutely need those. If you guys know, back in my rooms these days, it's kind of slippery with all this stuff. So I need to make sure that I have my bars. And that was kind of important too. So there's that.
All right, so looks like Pam dropped off. So I'm just going to do a last minute pitch here to, let's see, new chair. Invite everybody here today to join us. Disability SA has partnered with an architectural class at UTSA, an architectural studio, and we are hosting a reception on December 3rd from 4 to 6 p.m. on universal design and their architectural projects that were designed around some of the scenarios that we had in our original charrette, if some of you participated in that several months ago. But it will be at the AIA office of San Antonio, located right there off of Flores Street. And they'll be presenting their designs in universal design based on scenarios of families living with individuals with a wide variety of different disabilities, as well as those who are young now, but would like to age in place and stay in their home as they grow older. And with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Jane, unless we see Pam pop back in, but she will close us out.
Thank you, Melanie. What a great conversation we've had this morning about housing and barriers to some of the barriers that our panelists have experienced, but also the opportunities that are out there. Our next event, the third in the series, will be on December 2nd, Thursday, December 2nd, and we will be having panelists who are living with hearing and a vision disability. So please join us then. We want to see you. As you can see, thanks, Melanie, for putting that up there. Thank you, attendees, for joining us in this very important conversation. And I think we've had two now. We've got two under our belts, and the conversation has been rich. So I welcome you again to join us on December 2nd, and then again on December 3rd, if you can, at the AIA, to talk about housing and people with disabilities and the opportunities that we have to for access. So thank you again. Bye-bye.
So Pam, people are headed out, but I would like for you to go ahead and add your final remarks so that I can keep it in the recording that we'll post on our YouTube channel. So if you can, let's see, does that help if I click that button? Can you unmute?
How far did, before it cut out, did?
Right at the very beginning. So you can just start right at the top of your thoughts. Again, the question was, what is an insider solution that you would like to share with our attendees concerning accessible housing?
Well, these are, my ideas are a little more global than just housing. They pertain to the public perception of individuals with IDD. You see other minorities, people of color, people with differing sexual orientation represented in advertising and in entertainment, but you don't really see people that have differing abilities portrayed on a regular basis. And so it's not perceived as normal. And that has to change. We need to understand that people most people are going to develop a disability within their lifetime, or they're going to have somebody in their family with a disability. And it needs to be more, this is our environment, and less, that's them. And I want to stay away from them because I don't want to be reminded of what I could become. The other thing is the public school system. When you look at the different school districts, there is a vast educational difference from one school district to the next. Some are actually on the right track. Some are still stuck in the 1970s, and they don't prepare individuals. Just as James said, they push what you can't do and do not encourage people to do the things that they can do with a stretch. Also, the higher education is almost non-existent for individuals with IDD in San Antonio. Again, that is an area that needs to be corrected. I mean, there are places in other states where they have programs set up for the college experience for individuals with IDD, and there's no reason that San Antonio could not offer that. At the very root of things is economic disability. And if we can change the educational system, we can impact individuals' ability to earn, and that in itself, and then change the regulations that have people lose their support services for health and when they reach a certain economic level. So there's things that need to be done on a national level and on a local level to increase visibility of individuals, acceptance of individuals, and then provide training that allows improvement in employment outcomes. So that's my 2 cents. 2
I
points.
appreciate your 2 cents. Thank you. All right.